What if the next oil barons aren't drilling into the earth, but engineering the weather above it? What if the most valuable assets of the 21st century aren't oil fields or real estate, but rainfall, clean air, carbon storage, and the algorithms that decide who gets them? As climate chaos accelerates, something extraordinary is happening beneath the headlines. While most of the world sees catastrophe, a small strategic few see opportunity. Welcome to the Great Green Gold Rush, where today's climate solutions are quietly minting tomorrow's dynasties. In late 2024 and early 2025, the world crossed thresholds scientists once said were decades away. Cities recorded temperatures never seen in human history. Entire regions flooded, burned or dried out, sometimes all within the same year. And yet, in the middle of this global instability, something else was rising. Private climate summits, closed-door investment rounds, governments quietly outsourcing environmental recovery to corporations. Because, while billions fear climate change, a new elite is learning how to own the solutions. This is the silent revolution no one talks about, not fought with tanks or armies but with patents, carbon credits, AI models, and control over life-sustaining systems. The question isn't whether a new elite is forming, the question is, who saw this coming first? A decade ago, these technologies were dismissed as niche. Wind and solar were seen as idealistic experiments, not serious contenders for the world's energy needs. The idea that renewables could power entire cities, let alone nations, was met with skepticism and even ridicule. The world was still deeply entrenched in fossil fuels, and the old guard believed that would never change. Carbon capture was too expensive, battery storage was unscalable, renewables were unreliable. The headlines were filled with stories of failed projects and missed targets. Investors were wary and governments hesitated to commit. The future of clean energy looked uncertain, and many wrote it off as a passing trend. But some people weren't listening. They saw opportunity where others saw risk. They believed that the world was on the verge of a transformation, and they were determined to be part of it. These were the visionaries, the risk-takers, the ones who refused to accept the status quo. Former oil executives quietly pivoted. They began to reimagine their roles, shifting from defending the old energy order to building the new one. They brought decades of experience, deep industry connections, and a keen sense for timing. Hedge fund managers shifted capital into climate tech. They saw the writing on the wall and moved billions into startups and scale-ups, betting on the technologies that would define the next era of energy. Engineers left Silicon Valley to work on energy, not apps. They traded the world of social media and e-commerce for the challenge of building a sustainable future, bringing with them a culture of innovation and relentless problem-solving. They didn't abandon fossil fuels out of morality. They did it because they saw the next power shift coming. The real motivation was foresight, not idealism. They understood that the balance of power was about to change, and they wanted to be ahead of the curve. Carbon capture companies that once struggled for funding are now signing multi-decade contracts with governments. What was once a moonshot is now a cornerstone of national policy, with billions in public and private investment flowing in. Energy storage startups, once valued in the millions, are now worth tens of billions in 2025. Their technology is the backbone of the new grid, enabling renewables to deliver power around the clock and across continents. And here's the part most people miss. These companies don't just reduce emissions, they're building the infrastructure of the future, shaping the very foundation of how societies function in a world facing climate extremes. They own the infrastructure that allows nations to function in a destabilized climate. When storms hit or droughts linger, it's their systems that keep the lights on and the economy moving. Whoever controls energy storage controls the grid. They decide when and where power flows, and who gets access in times of crisis. Whoever controls carbon markets controls compliance. They set the rules for what counts as clean, and who pays the price for pollution. Whoever controls the software controls the system. Algorithms now decide how energy is distributed, traded, and consumed, making software the new seat of power. This isn't just green innovation, it's strategic positioning for the next industrial revolution, a race to control the levers of tomorrow's world. But carbon was only the beginning. For decades, the world's attention was fixed on greenhouse gases, emissions targets, and the race to decarbonize. Yet, as the climate crisis deepened, it became clear that the story was far bigger than carbon alone. As climate volatility intensified, another realization set in. The future wouldn't just be about emissions, it would be about resources that no longer behave predictably. Water, once taken for granted, now runs dry in places that once overflowed. Food systems, once stable, are now threatened by droughts, floods, and shifting seasons, and critical minerals, the backbone of modern technology, are suddenly in short supply. In this new reality, early movers, visionaries and investors, recognized the opportunity. They moved quickly, securing access to resources and technologies that would define the next era of power and influence. Water purification and desalination companies are now becoming geopolitical players. Their technologies are no longer just utilities, they are lifelines for entire regions, shaping alliances and rivalries on a global scale. Entire cities, and even nations, depend on privately managed systems for drinkable water. The companies that control these systems wield unprecedented influence, deciding who gets access, and at what price. Vertical farming empires are emerging in climate-stressed regions, not just growing food, but stabilizing supply chains, reducing transportation emissions, and ensuring food security in a world where traditional agriculture is increasingly unreliable. And then, there are the minerals: lithium, cobalt, rare earths. These are the new oil, essential for batteries, electronics, and the renewable energy revolution. The race to secure these resources is reshaping global politics. Marketed as ethical mining, these operations are essential for batteries, renewables, and electric infrastructure. But behind the scenes, competition for access is fierce, and the stakes have never been higher, because to control the minerals is to control the energy transition itself. Whoever holds the keys to these resources shapes the future of transportation, power, and technology. This is where environmental innovation turns into empire building. The companies and countries that lead in green technology are building new forms of power, economic, political, and strategic. Because when nations depend on your technology to survive, you don't need armies. You have leverage. In the age beyond carbon, control over resources and innovation is the new frontier of global influence. Every industrial revolution creates dynasties. Oil created the Rockefellers, steel created the Carnegies. These families didn't just amass wealth, they shaped the very fabric of society, influencing everything from politics to culture. Their legacies still echo in the corridors of power today, a testament to how transformative new industries can be for those who seize the moment. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, technology created the Silicon Valley elite, visionaries and risk-takers, who built empires, from code and silicon chips, redefining communication, commerce, and even our daily routines. Their influence is global, their reach nearly limitless. Now, a new revolution is underway. Climate control and sustainability are poised to create the next generation of dynasties. The race to control green energy, carbon removal, and sustainable infrastructure is accelerating, and the winners will shape the world for decades to come. Right now, strategic mergers are consolidating power at an unprecedented rate. Companies are joining forces, not just to survive, but to dominate entire sectors of the future economy. Energy companies are merging with data firms, blending physical infrastructure with digital intelligence. This fusion is creating new giants capable of controlling both the flow of electrons and the flow of information. Agricultural giants are acquiring AI startups, transforming how we grow food and manage resources. The future of farming is being written by algorithms and automation, overseen by those with the vision and capital to invest early. Meanwhile, private equity is rolling up water, energy, and carbon assets into single powerful portfolios. These moves are quietly redrawing the map of global resource control, and behind many of these moves are family offices, not hedge funds. Why does that matter? Because family offices operate with a different mindset, one that's focused on legacy, stability, and long-term influence. Family offices think in generations, not quarters. Their strategies are measured in decades, not fiscal years. They're patient, persistent, and often invisible to the public eye. They're building systems their grandchildren will inherit, laying foundations for influence that will last long after today's headlines have faded. Based on current trajectories, analysts quietly speculate that by 2030, a handful of conglomerates will dominate carbon removal infrastructure, global energy storage, water purification networks, climate modeling AI, and sustainable resource extraction. These sectors will be the backbone of the new world order, not governments, not international bodies, private dynasties, families whose names you may never know, but whose decisions will shape the planet's future. And once those systems are locked in, they become nearly impossible to displace. The future, it seems, will be written not just by innovation, but by those who control the levers of power for generations to come. So what does this mean for the rest of us? On one hand, these technologies are necessary. Without them, climate recovery may be impossible, but here's the uncomfortable question no one wants to ask. What happens when survival systems are owned by the few? When clean air is priced? When water access depends on contracts? When climate stability becomes a subscription service? Will solutions be distributed equitably? Or will resilience become a luxury? History tells us something sobering. Every time a resource becomes scarce, power concentrates, and climate control may become the most powerful resource of all. This isn't a warning against innovation, it's a warning against ignorance, because the future is being built right now, in boardrooms most people will never see. The great green gold rush isn't coming. It's already here. The question isn't whether new dynasties will rise, they already are. The real question is, will the future of the planet belong to everyone, or only to those who learned how to own its recovery? Understanding this shift isn't optional anymore. It's essential, because the most valuable asset of the future won't be oil, land, or data. It will be control over the conditions that allow life to continue. If you want to understand the forces shaping tomorrow's world, you need to watch who's buying it today.